We all know December is busy and frantic and full of high expectations, but can it also be full of peace? Is peace actually possible at any moment, really? It is, but it doesn't come easy, because things are coming for your peace. Good news though, Jesus has an answer for us. Jesus is the answer for us. What does this have to do with Luke 14? Let's find out.
Hi, everybody.
Hello. We are back.
We are. And today we're talking about peace, which is funny because we just talked for like an hour and
Trying to get there.
trying to get there. Yeah.
Lauren has like 1,000 things on her plate, and
you have 1,000 things on
it's
your
Christmas
plate.
season, and we're in a vacancy, so.
Yay. Yeah, so it's funny because this morning I was listening to Bible verses about peace, or like Bible passages about peace on my Dwell app, because they have those playlists and stuff. Yeah. And I kept seeing over and over again, like, practicing peace. And like, it never seemed like it always seems like peace is a direct result of an action. So like, if we're thinking that peace just happens, it's just not like that. Like, it has, I mean, sometimes maybe it feels more like that, but I feel like peace is like the result of putting your faith in God, or praying, or something like that, in a way that you actually, there's like some action involved.
Yeah.
It's not, it doesn't happen. You're not accidentally
peaceful. It's not
peaceful.
just like, yeah.
Yeah.
I think sometimes it can just be a gift from God.
Yes. Like, yeah, like in maybe like a circumstance where you're like, I just had this peace about that.
But you can't just expect.
Yeah, I don't think
he's always going to gift you that without effort, I guess.
Yeah, I feel like maybe those are like special gifts of grace. But if it's like just the day-to-day in and out kind of thing, that has to be something you kind of practice.
I agree.
Over and over.
Yep, I totally agree.
So, yeah, we've had a lot of things to pray for peace about.
Yeah.
And you know, it's like a good thing too, where I think realized over the last few weeks, I've heard a lot about like lamenting. I remember even you mentioned last time about the Psalms of Lament. And then for some reason, repeatedly, I just heard that. And I've heard a lot
Isn't that interesting?
I know,
like God's
like,
just giving you that?
He's like, you can just tell me about it. And I was like...
It's an act of worship,
I know, I'm like trying to be grateful over and over again, right? Because otherwise I will like fall into some sort of despair that isn't good. And if I don't actually take the time to be grateful, then I'll probably spiral into panic attacks. But also just like yesterday, I was like, it's okay to lament. So I was like, hey, God, this sucks. Like, this just really sucks. And I'm crying. And I'm like, if I have one more thing, it's just going to break me in half. I can't do it. So I just need you to do this. And, you know, I didn't have maybe that immediate fix to the problem, but it felt good to tell him. Yeah. You know?
You know what's interesting? Oh, no, I can't remember where I read this. In the last week, I was reading something that maybe it was on Instagram. Someone's coming out with a new book. But it was talking about how in Christianity, a lot of times we're like, well, feelings are just feelings and they don't really matter. And which we agree with.
Yes.
But then it was like, but God doesn't give us things like that without a purpose.
Right.
Which I think is the piece that I haven't always like let myself dive into. Does that make sense? That concept of like, yeah, feelings are changeable and whatever, and they're not to be trusted on some level.
Right.
You know? But also they are gifts.
Yes.
And so...
Yeah,
and I haven't read the book. Do you remember what it was?
I think it was Jennie Allen.
Okay.
I feel like it was.
Like she's coming out with something.
Yeah, okay. Or maybe she's I think she did come out with a book about it, and maybe she was just speaking to maybe some responses to that. Like, oh, you shouldn't, give into your feelings. And it's like, no, but your feelings are indicators of things.
Right. And if you just try to stuff it,
right,
that's not good either.
Right.
You know.
And so Jesus felt feelings, and God is described as having anger and joy and sadness, all those things. But it's not, but the thing about him is he can experience all those things and still be full and complete and
good.
And, And for us, it's an indicator of, I think I've even heard it, I want to say Andy Stanley said it was like an indicator light on your dashboard. Where you go, oh, okay, maybe my tire pressure's low.
Yeah.
Which I've had experience with,
Right.
Maybe my tire pressure's low. But maybe it's an indicator of that I have too much on my plate. Or
not getting enough sleep, or
or maybe
having a hard season.
Yeah. And maybe having my priorities, I keep wanting to put certain things at the top of my priority list, and they just don't belong there because I can't control them. So Monica and I were talking about like the sale of our house, and there's stuff that has to happen to our house, and I was like, if I have to do one more thing,
right,
I'm gonna lose it. And so then that kind of just takes over everything, and I know that in my head I just have to keep kind of like readjusting my priority list, and like this isn't going to be, I'm not going to let my house be my all-consuming priority. So I say that, but I know. I was just crying about that because
it's okay.
I'm like, I have to get out of here. I love my house and I hate it right now.
Yeah. Well, it's a source of stress too. I was also telling Lauren that we had just had dinner with my parents and Tony and Greg and Susan Finke, who have Dwelling 114. And if you guys haven't checked out the book Jesus, Joining Jesus on His Mission, you so totally good. Should. It's so good. You guys will put that in the show notes. But we were talking about the Amish and how, we're like, well, do they have this rule or that rule? I don't even remember how we got talking about it, but then Greg said, well, basically, it's not really about the rules here or there. It's like they're trying to simplify their life so that they can find God in that simplicity. And I was like, boy, that sounds so nice.
I know. I feel like that's something that you have to fight for because it's not going to happen automatically either. I really do think that everything is crowding in, and it's a constant reassessment of, is this worth... I mean, I have a quote somewhere, but I think I want to say it's George McCown, or McEwen. He talks about essentialism, I think is what it's called.
Okay.
Anyway, he said something along the lines of, I'm going to have to look this one up. He said something along the lines of, it's not about saying no. He said minimalists or whatever, they understand that everything is a trade-off. Everything we do, every way we spend our time and our words and our energy, that's all a trade-off. And so it's just kind of...
because if you're not doing this or that, then you're, or you are doing that, then you're not doing something else.
Right. So it's just a lot of trying to figure out, okay, what is worth my time, and then what can I do with the things that I said yes to?
Right.
So I am going to find that quote,
because it makes it more intentional then, instead of like you fall into the trap of like, well, I guess I'll do that too, and then I guess I'll do that too.
Right. And just because I have a space of time doesn't mean I have to fill it.
Yep.
So we're talking about peace because that is, I think, a big major player in it, is trying to figure out what components there are in peace, and what it looks like to have peace and walk in peace and all that.
Yeah.
Our verses, it's not very much today. It's Luke 14, verses 7 through 11. And Jesus, it's on a Sabbath. Jesus is having a meal with the Pharisees, a ruler of the Pharisees, and everybody's watching him and waiting for him to do something bad, like usual. And he responds, okay. And there had been a man who had dropsy, which is like edema. It's a swelling in your body's fluids. So he healed this man, and the Pharisees are let's see here. The Pharisees are, having a problem with this. And he asks them, is it lawful to heal on the Sabbath? And he does a lot of like what we talked about, I think, last time, right? So it's almost, it's just another instance where he is calling out the Pharisees on what their priorities are as far as keeping the Sabbath. And then right after that, he tells them a parable. And it says, now he told a parable to those who were invited when he noticed how they chose the places of honor, saying to them, when you are invited by someone to a wedding feast, do not sit down in a place of honor, lest someone more distinguished than you be invited by him. And he who invited you both will come and say to you, give your place to this person, and then you will begin with shame to take the lowest place. But when you are invited, go and sit in the lowest place, so that when your host comes, he may say to you, friend, move up higher. Then you will be honored in the presence of all who sit at table with you. For everyone who exalts himself will be humbled, and he who humbles himself will be exalted.
What do you think a modern day example of this would be? I was sitting there thinking about it when I was reading this through earlier. Like, what is because I can't really imagine at a dinner party a host being like, actually, you go sit
right
at the kids' table, and,
right.
I just don't see that happening. So I'm trying to think of, like,
I think maybe we're not maybe in the realm of social networking as much, or like business. I mean,
I'm just trying to imagine us.
Well, hello.
Being very fancy.
Very, very fancy. And seeking out. But I think it's a pretty typical thing where, you know what? I'll say, this does happen sometimes in the church. So like when we had Scott's installation, you kind of saw a lot of people in the same position of pastor of all things, kind of jockeying for who has like the best,
really
ministry. Like, oh yeah, well look what God did in my ministry. Oh yeah, well look what he did in my ministry. And you feel like it was like a weird, it was so weird because it was
like they're bragging on God, kind of.
It was the most, and it was so gross, I have to say. I was just like, get over yourselves. You're just pastors. And that's what happens when you're married to someone like Scott, when you're like, you guys are just pastors. Don't stop, But there was this kind of, even in the church, maybe even at conferences, people want to talk to, like, they want to be seen talking to this person who's like super important, and I know that in high school, like Lily was just telling me today that there's this one girl who's very talented and whatever, but she's kind of a jerk. And some of the other kids were like, well, she kind of has a reason to be a jerk because she's
so fabulous,
so talented. And I was like, yeah, except for Jesus is not a fan of that idea. Like, you don't get to treat other people like they don't count because you can sing. So anyway,
that makes sense. That's
yeah,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
It's just this idea of, because then we're always trying to figure out where we fit in.
Right.
We want to fit in.
Because it's sort of in our natural instinct to want to have the hierarchy. I mean, even the disciples did this. Like, well, who's the more important than the other one?
It's like, that is such a good point.
And Jesus is like, nah.
I know. They were like those pastors.
Yeah.
They're like, oh, I did this miracle. And you're like, okay, well, good for you.
It's just so funny that that's sort of our natural bent.
It is, yeah.
To want, even if it's not our natural bent, to want to put ourselves higher on the hierarchy, we still sort of have one, maybe.
We do. I think that just comes down to like our sinful nature of just, we're not quite satisfied with who we are solely with God. So then we're like, well, but I want to be important in this way too.
Sure. Have other people think I'm important. Yeah. That's interesting. But God's saying, like, no, that's not how it works.
No, I know.
He tries to tell us, and we.
Yeah. I thought this actually worked really well, considering this is the Advent week of peace, because how much more peaceful is it when you just are like, I'm just going to assume I'm the lowest person here. Mm-hmm. And then that just takes all the guesswork out of everything. Right? You're not constantly wondering, well, maybe I'm higher than that person. Well, I'm definitely higher than that person.
Because do you know what is involved in all of that? Comparison. Mm-hmm. It has to be.
Yeah.
Because you can't determine hierarchy without comparing one thing to another.
Right. And by your own judgment.
Standards. Yeah.
Which is right? Changeable.
Yeah. For sure. What I think is interesting is very different from what someone else might think is interesting or, worthwhile or whatever.
Yeah, so, exactly. Yeah. Skill sets that are more important than other skill sets. There is an SNL skit, and I don't even know, I probably found it on a rabbit trail of some kind, but like a woman someone needs a doctor on the airplane. And someone else gets up and they're like, oh, are you a doctor? And that person's like, no, but I'm a lawyer. And I think we can all agree that being a lawyer is the most important job. And then like someone else does, and they're like, they're also a lawyer, but they don't think being a lawyer is the most important job. They think something else.
Was this a Nate Bargatze thing?
Yes, I think Nate Bargatze was
okay, because I think I've seen this too.
Yes,
yeah.
And that's probably why I watched it.
Yeah.
And then it was like, someone else was like, well, I'm a teacher. And everyone's like, boo. And then someone else like, well, I have the hardest job of all. I'm a mother. And they're all, and like the joke is that like everybody is trying to
be the most important.
My job is the most important. And it was funny. It was good to pick fun at that. But Jesus is offering this way of peace, which is to humble yourself. Mm-hmm. We think of peace as something we want to possess, but I think peace is one of those things that is fully realized once it's something you make.
Oh.
So we're blessed are the peacemakers. Shalom, again, going back to the Bible Project, I watched their thing about peace.
Sure, and they talk about shalom.
Shalom, and the shalom is it's the picture of a lot of things that are separate being brought together, like being made into a whole thing.
Okay.
And so
because it is wholeness.
Yes.
And if you say shalom, shalom, it means perfect.
Yes, perfect.
Wholeness or something.
Yeah. So it's this idea that life is complicated, complex, but it's made whole, and restored.
Do you think? I mean, maybe this is our own hierarchy talking, but in my mind, life was more simple then than it is now.
Yeah.
I mean, less complex, maybe.
Yes, I would say in a lot of ways. But I feel like in the absence of drama, like we will always make things harder than they need to be. But I do think or
in the absence of like having to wash our clothes in a river.
Yeah.
Then we'll find something else in that time
yes.
to make it complex,
yes.
right? Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, I do think they probably had the blessing of things being simpler, like you're saying with the Amish, but they can definitely, they obviously had they had their drama.
I'm, like, nervous about thinking about that too much, because then I'm going to be like, what can we eliminate? And Tony's going to be like, stop it!
This is what I did. Yeah, even just thinking, to use it as a visual, since we are moving, and we'll be moving into a place with less square footage, when I get a moving truck or moving pod or whatever, I will be buying one that will fit the house that we're going into, not the house that I'm currently in.
So you can get rid of the things.
Right, so then I can see what can my life hold. And I don't know that we like goldfish, we fill our life with as much as like time as we have. We kind of just fill our spaces.
So it's like goldfish because they grow to the size of their tank.
Yes.
Or the plant that we talked about.
Or the plant, yes.
That grows to the size of the pot.
I have some space here. Let me just fill that. And then I have space here and let me fill that. And so having that truck in that way means that I have to focus ahead of time. Okay, I only want to fill this much space. Mm-hmm. And so it's a very deliberate idea of, in my life, I only want to fill this much space with stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I want to leave, I need to leave space. Mm-hmm. which is very hard. And I would love to say, oh, it's so simple, but like you're in seasons of life where sometimes you're like, nope, this is how it's going to be. And I have to just kind of muscle through a few months of hardship. Mm-hmm. Or you have to go, all right, what am I cutting out? Mm-hmm. So, and even if it's just for that season, you know, just for this season, I think, I don't know if it's John Acuff. He says something about like, sometimes you have to choose what you want to suck at. Because you're like, I can only be good at so many things. Mm-hmm. So right now, like he was saying when his kids were little, like his yard was not great because that was like bottom of his priority list. Mm-hmm. And he just had to decide this is just going to suck for now.
That's fine. Yeah.
And it's okay. But the idea of making peace.
Yeah, what does that look like, Lauren?
What does that look like?
Maybe choosing simplicity is a piece of that.
I think so. Mm-hmm. And did you send me or did I send you that reel of Jordan Peterson talking about comforting others? So when you walk into like a social situation, if you have a social anxiety, if instead of focusing on you and how to make yourself feel better, if you look at another person and you do whatever you can to make them feel good, that actually relieves your social anxiety. Mm-hmm. Just that practice of looking at someone else and trying to make it okay for them.
Mm-hmm. I could totally see that.
Yeah. I thought that was a really interesting antidote to social anxiety. Because I feel like more and more people have that. Mm-hmm. And we've kind of glorified it, maybe.
Well, and I think that's a piece of humility, right?
Yeah.
Is like thinking of yourself less.
Yeah.
And so I remember I went through a season where I felt like self-conscious as a younger person. And someone said to me, it's really selfish for you to always be thinking about that. And I was like, how dare you, you know? But then I got to thinking about it and I was like, they're not wrong.
I know.
You know? But I remember being like,
oh my gosh.
It was like hard to hear, you know? But it was like it stuck with me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have asked our realtor with some of the issues with the house, I said, please tell me if we're being unreasonable or if our egos are getting in the way. Mm. Because I do want to protect what is mine and think about what is for me and what's best for me and how I'm being treated. And if I do that, then sometimes I get blindsided. I miss out on some other gift. Talking to my... I was talking to my sister-in-law about this, and I was bringing this up to her because we have both seen that when kids get to a certain age, they become, for some reason, very self-conscious about maybe some of the talents they have. Mm-hmm. And I think it frustrates the crap out of me.
I know. I think it's like, really universal.
It is.
But you see these kids that were like, so happy to sing
so outgoing and just like sharing their love of music with everyone. And
whatever was in their head came out their mouth, and it was a beautiful, beautiful thing.
And then
all of a
shut
sudden
down.
They're like nothing. Yeah.
And I'm like, maybe it's not about how it's not about you being up there and everybody looking at you and you, but it's about you giving that gift to somebody else and maybe making their life a little bit better. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I mean, you and I always joke about how our moms were always like, sing for, and all that kind of stuff. But in that moment, I wasn't allowed to really think about, I don't really want, it was a...
I know. I'm actually really grateful for it.
I am too.
I think back at like all the times we sang at nursing homes for grandmas and stuff. And just think about that. Like, I didn't know necessarily how to connect with them.
Right.
Like conversationally.
Yeah.
Because they're in a nursing home all day long and I have no context for.
Right. And it's.
Yeah. For that. But we could share music together.
Yeah.
I know.
And I have really good memories of that. Mm-hmm. So as much as I give my mom crap about that, and we all joke about it in our family, it is something I'm grateful for now. So I think that's one way to make peace. And if I'm sitting here striving for status and comparing myself to other people, then I'm not going to be thinking about making peace for anyone.
Yeah, the comparison piece, I think, is... Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't know. Maybe someone would disagree with me on this, but I don't see myself as someone that's ever really been striving for status necessarily. It's not generally my driving force.
No.
But I think the comparison piece, and I'm going to go on a limb here and say for females specifically, I think it happens to everyone, but I think it can be crippling for females.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is the opposite of peace, that's for sure.
Yeah. And I think so when you're not striving and you're not comparing or trying to climb. I know. I strive for things.
I know. But status isn't the striving factor generally.
Yeah, but when you are unconcerned with status and you are talking to just regular people like they're important, then that somehow, and I know you're not doing it for this reason, but it does in a way then exalt you in a way that makes people want to be around you because you are making them important. So you're like a peacemaker in that way. Like people feel peace talking to you because you make them feel seen and heard and all that kind of stuff. And you have godly wisdom and all that for them. So then it is like God. It says whoever, he who humbles himself will be exalted. There is just almost a natural thing because people then they want to honor you because you're honoring them, so. And I know and you're not doing it transactionally.
Right.
So you're not puffing them up. They know it's a genuine interest.
Yeah, for sure. You have some other ones here too.
I did.
Peace equals accepting the lowest place. Peace equals identity not rooted in the opinion of others. That's
real.
Like comparison, but that's not completely comparison.
Right. Yeah.
You can get wrapped up in what other people think of you, for sure.
Yes.
It's easy to do that,
And I think...
And that is sort of like stymieing or whatever. Like it can completely keep you from doing the thing that God has for you.
Yes.
If you're worried about how someone else might think of it or think of you in doing that or whatever. And actually, it is the opposite of humility again, because it's you thinking about yourself more than other people.
Yeah. And I think when I am worried about how people think of me, that by nature extends to my family, and then I am not very peaceful with my family because I want my kids to behave in a certain way. Yeah, because I want them to know respect and blah, blah, blah. But also because if they act like jerks, then everybody's going to think I'm a bad mom. You know what I mean? And so it's just this, if I'm rooted in the opinion of how other people see me via my children, then I'm definitely not at peace. Right. They're not, and I'm especially not at peace because I can't technically control what they do.
I know, right?
if your identity is rooted in the opinion of others, you literally cannot control how other people see you. Right. You can try, and you can manipulate a little bit. Ugh. Yeah, it's so exhausting.
Ultimately, that's going to backfire, isn't it?
Right.
I mean, maybe unless you're really good at it.
Yeah. I'm trying.
I can think of a couple people.
There's an episode of Parks and Rec where Leslie Knope, Amy Poehler's character, is running for city council.
Okay.
And they do focus groups, and she is sitting there watching the focus groups look at her campaign ad, and then they give their opinion. And one guy does not like her, and she gets like tunnel vision, trying to make him like her, and it all just like
falls apart.
Oh yeah. And guess what? He never likes her.
No,
he never does.
He's in the 10%.
She's like, yes, and she's like, buying him a bowling game and beer and all that.
Episode. Yeah.
And Ben ends up punching him right in the face. And it's awesome. But Ben keeps telling her, you got a bunch of other people out here. And she's focusing on him.
Oh, that's funny.
I put peace equals positioning yourself in a way that assumes the best about others. Question mark.
But I think...
Is that true or not?
When I read that, what I hear you saying is that when you're going to have an interaction with someone, because I think we all do this on some level, like we think we know what that other person's thinking, you know?
Yeah.
And if I'm talking to you and we're good friends, I think, well, Lauren's for me.
Yeah.
So the things that you say and the way you say them, I'm like, well, yeah, but she's for me. So,
right.
you know, so
right.
then you're just assuming the best mental like spin on it, right?
Yeah.
But if you're talking to someone that maybe you don't get along with or you don't see eye to eye, and whatever they say, they could say the exact same thing as Lauren says. Mm-hmm. But I'm going to think, well, they're not for me. So whatever that, you know, like you're going to take the negative spin on whatever that is, or assume a negative undertone or whatever. And so then you're cultivating this like unrest.
Yes.
Because you think you know what they're thinking. Mm-hmm. But we never know
what
someone else is thinking. We don't know it, you know? So.
Yeah. And there's definitely no peace in that.
No. And I, in talking to a counselor that would like specialize in blended families, this was something I definitely struggled with.
Yeah.
This whole like concept of like, I think I know what she's thinking.
Right.
But I don't, you know? And so then I would assume a negative, whatever, maybe rightly so, but it's not, it doesn't get you anywhere good.
No, and then even if they say something positive, you're just like, well, what do they mean by that?
How is that a manipulation tactic for whatever, you know? But instead, if you just assume the best, whatever, even if that's not what they're thinking or trying to convey,
right,
you're not out anything.
True.
You are only, you only win in that scenario, you know?
Yes.
So there you go, you guys.
Yeah, there's a lot more peace in that.
That's a lot of money in counseling right there. Just take that and do as you will with it.
Can I tell you, therapy is so awesome. It really is. There are so many things where I'm just like, oh, I'm glad that I can understand my kid a little bit better.
Right. You know, sometimes it's worth it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Peace is equals creating space for others to be honored, too. So, I was thinking, since it's Christmas time and we have lots of media, songs, movies, all that talk about, they all kind of have this striving for peace. What do they even offer?
I was thinking about this too, because I think that in my own heart, when I'm feeling like unrest or whatever and I want peace, especially in this season, you think, well, you know what? I'm going to go light a candle at home. I'm going to put on Christmas music. I'm going to sit down and pray to God looking at the Christmas tree. Like, it's going to be this very peaceful moment, you know, but all of these things are like external.
Yeah.
You know, so I think what the world offers a lot of times is external avenues to like cultivate peace, but it isn't the same thing as finding it in Jesus.
Right.
Like, we're always going to be sort of missing the point without him.
And it's not that any of those things are inherently bad.
No.
They're gifts from God.
Absolutely. And we're going to maybe quiet our mind by watching this really, you know, show that brings us peace, or read this book that brings us peace, or whatever it is, you know. But it's not the same as finding peace in him. I mean, it might, you know, the scary thoughts or something, but it's
for
not,
a little bit, but that's so temporary.
It is. It's not going to be fulfilling.
Yeah.
So
I tried watching there you go. So I did not finish it. A movie called Merry Friggin' Christmas.
Okay,
because it has Joel McHale and Robin Williams.
Oh, really?
And
is it old?
And Candice Bergen is in it.
Really?
And the woman who plays Beverly on the Goldbergs.
Really?
I mean, they're like names in this.
Wow.
And Lauren, what's her name from? Wow, Gilmore Girls.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so like there are names in this movie, and I was like, it's probably like funny. I never like really took off. But,
I've never heard of it.
I mean, it has Robin Williams in it, right? But it tries. It's like it can't figure out if it's going to be heartfelt or if it's comedy, and it tries too hard at both of those things. So it feels so very forced. And if anybody disagrees with me on this, let's go. Let's fight. But I couldn't even finish it because I was like, eh. But I think if we try to force things too much, it has to be this way or this way, instead of just letting it be our story. I'm stretching this metaphor big time.
All right, let me see.
If we are trying to figure out too hard, is this what kind of moment this is, instead of just letting the moment be what it is and seeing God and Jesus right there. And maybe it's a sad moment and just letting it be sad. And maybe it's a happy moment, letting it be happy, and not trying to make it too much. There can be peace in that. Like, that can be a really beautiful story to tell. But if we're like, okay, this is going to be our happy, joyful moment. I'm going to put everything into this. You know, like, that's always the joke.
I think as moms on Christmas Eve, this is like a big, because I know I would
the
like build it up.
Expectations are so high.
I can make everything just right so that they have a wonderful, wonderful moment, you know?
Yeah.
And if it doesn't play out that way, it's always really disheartening.
It's like the worst.
So maybe peace is having low expectations.
Hey, yeah.
On some level.
Yes,
you know?
lowering yourself and your expectations. And then I had written down Hallmark soundtracks. Okay, so I was watching a Hallmark movie the other day because I could not shut my brain off. And it was that day where you had texted me and I was like, no, I can't do anything. I just feel like garbage. And I was like, I'm just going to try and watch this Holiday in Handcuffs with Melissa Joan Hart
and sounds really bad.
And Mario Lopez. Okay. So I'm like, childhood actors.
Yes.
These are my people, right? The movie wasn't terrible. It wasn't great, but it wasn't terrible.
Okay.
But I thought it wouldn't be as cheesy except for this background soundtrack. You know, like
made it worse. Yeah.
Yes, like anytime they would have like a serious conversation.
It was like a swelling.
It was like a ding 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 ding, or if it was like cueing you to be like, oh, this is supposed to be a silly stupid moment. And then it'd be like doo doo doo. You know, and it was like this soundtrack.
It was triggering the emotional response.
And I thought this movie would actually be decent if it was just a regular soundtrack. And I know that's just like a Hallmark movie staple. Sure. It's like, you know, that this is a moment they fall in love because you hear the chimes in the background, you know?
Yeah.
Peace is like that soundtrack for us, in that if that is playing in the background of where we are, like if it depends on if I have my priorities, if I'm looking to Jesus and that's playing in the background, then whatever's playing out in front of me is going to be a lot better.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
I'm, again, another random metaphor,
but
I was thinking this.
I really like that.
Because we all are playing soundtracks all the time. Like, you know, my soundtrack earlier, obviously, was like, this is too hard, I can't do it. It's too hard, I can't do it. It's too hard. It really is too hard. Anybody who says, God won't give you more than you can handle, sell your house and move. Just move. That's all you have to do.
While your kid is graduating. While your husband is gone. While you have car problems. Please. While you're trying to get rid of a hot tub.
While your grandma dies.
Do all those things.
Please do all that. You know, all these. But if the soundtrack to my life is... Okay, so if I'm hearing my soundtrack as I can't do it, it's too hard, everything sucks, blah, 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 then I need to like look around at what's going on maybe, and that's like, again, that indicator. But if the soundtrack is, okay, this is hard, but it's not impossible.
One step at a time.
Right, one step at a time. Like, think about the things
to live in His grace and His provision 1 minute at a time. 1 hour at a time.
Just like daily bread, minute bread.
Like, right?
I just need like a microwave, just second of grace in this moment, you know? And it's amazing the difference it can make.
Because He is teaching us things in that. To rely on Him, and I know that's invaluable to learn. And you're going to go off course, and you're going to all of a sudden be like, why the heck am I putting so much emphasis on this? Why am I letting this ruin my day? And there's grace for that. Right. Or it's going to be moving forward. As you start your, you know, it's sort of a brand new start when you guys move. How can you simplify? How can you make this
and
better? I mean, just talking about bringing only the things that fit in the box. How can you do that emotionally? How can you do that mentally? How can you do that, you know? I mean, I want to do it too.
Let's. Come on. Yeah, I do think, and so like, obviously, then finding someone too, if you are having a hard time with that, finding someone too to talk to, because maybe your soundtrack is really full of despair or frustration or whatever, and
that can color everything else that happens.
And
because it
obviously
incites that emotional response going forward.
And then you have, and obviously reading scripture to get recentered and prayer and all that, but also finding a friend who can just like ask you questions and you know, like you were doing for me earlier, like just maybe try this, or you know, is this how important is this, and kind of, it's just finding a sounding board. And if you don't have a sounding board, just talk to us.
We are here.
We are here.
I think that's true, though. I do. One small aside. You talking about having your soundtrack.
Yes.
You know, I spent a lot of energy thinking about this when I was younger, because like music was life. I was very into the kind of music I liked, and I was like, you know, spent a lot of time listening to music, seeing music, like not missing anything that was happening in the music scene in Minneapolis, whatever. And I remember like trying to tailor, if I was going to have a soundtrack for my life, what songs would I put? I get 12 songs. So then I would sit and try to like find the songs, you know, like I want, for this kind of a moment, I need this kind of a song. And for this kind of a moment, I need that kind of a song.
Oh, funny.
Oh my gosh. That could be really fun to try to do, though.
I know. I would love to go back and listen to like some of the mix CDs that I have.
I was so into that.
Oh my gosh.
Bring you up, bring you down. I would
study music, like a music for like a friendship that we had, or like high school. I think I still have the one that my friend made me for her high school graduation.
Really?
Which would be hilarious to listen to. And I would probably be like, I'd probably listen to like 10 seconds of each song and be like, yeah, it's enough of that one. And there's enough of that one.
I one of my favorite mixtapes I ever got was from my friend Kim in high school. And it had like Weezer in it, and you know, I'm trying to remember there was some like angry girl music, like Veruca Salt and whatever. There was a lot. It was so fun, but I listened to the tape till it like fell apart, you know? How that would happen after a while. But the car that I was driving didn't have a tape player. So I have a boombox in the car.
Oh my gosh.
To play the tape. Yes.
Wow.
I know. And I remember, oh my gosh, how much time did we spend doing that? Driving around with that boombox on someone's lap, listening to...
Now they have like Bluetooth speakers that look like boomboxes.
Do they? They're bringing it back.
And they're like vintage. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Part of our soundtrack coming back from Missouri was... Edie downloaded 70 episodes of Bluey on and I was like, I'll just listen to Bluey and you guys just, and it is delightful to listen to Bluey.
It's so funny. The last mix CD I ever made, I spent 9 months making it for when Brody was born. I'm not kidding. It was this lullaby CD that I was like filtering through every song I've ever heard to try to put together the perfect collection of songs for Brody. That was the last one I ever made.
Aww.
I know, it kind of makes me sad to think about it.
Yeah. Now we have playlists.
I know. I don't tailor them in the same way, though.
No.
Because no one's judging me on that.
No. No one was judging you on the other stuff either.
But I was judging myself.
But this is the essence of who I am.
Right. I know. It's funny how you wanted. I think I spent a lot more time and energy trying to define that.
Yeah.
And when you get older, you're like, it doesn't matter.
And I was just listening to the Office Ladies podcast, and they were like, Angela is like 52, and Jenna is like 49. And so about to turn 50.
They're a little older than us.
And Angela's like, when you hit 50, it is amazing. Like the whole world opens up to you. And I was like, sweet.
We have that to look forward to.
It keeps getting better. I just loved hearing that.
Oh, that is fun.
Oh. I think the light for this week would be that peace is a gift that, that we are promised by just being in the presence of Jesus. We have Jesus, and we have a peace that like only he can give. I wrote, John 14:27, peace I leave with you, my peace I give to you. Not as the world gives, do I give to you. Let not your hearts be troubled, neither let them be afraid.
Okay, there was a song from the 90s of this verse. Do you remember this? Okay, my mom is probably screaming at me right now if she's listening to this. She'll text me later. Please text me later.
Just text us.
God, no, I'm trying to remember how it starts. My peace I give to you, I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid.
I don't know that song.
Do not let your hearts be troubled and do not be afraid.
Was it like a VBS song?
Maybe it was like Salty.
Oh.
Do you remember this?
Yeah.
I don't know. My mom will tell me. We'll
Marilyn, we
post it.
rely on you.
Please find it, Mom. Thank you. But it is so funny because that little song plays in my head sometimes.
Yeah.
Like at really opportune moments. It does. And I'm just like, thank you, for like the 90s. Like we're going to put Bible verses in the songs so you can remember them.
Right now I look at there's Seeds Family Worship, and they do a lot of CDs or like Seeds of Courage, Seeds of whatever, and it's all Bible verses with usually fairly decent Christian artists that are doing it, and it's enough to help you memorize it. So sometimes those come into my head. Mm-hmm. We did that a lot with the kids' Seeds Family Worship. What is that one that Jacqueline sent us? They did all the Psalms.
Bishop. Every Psalm or something, wasn't it? Was it called Every Psalm?
It was. It's Bishop. There's some.
Oh, I thought it was like a band called Every Psalm.
Oh,
or something like
that. I don't know about that. Yeah, I'm gonna totally look it up.
Okay.
Anyway, also another good one. Singing. We've talked. In our society today, I have heard oftentimes that we do not breathe correctly, and we breathe shallowly, and that does not help, and blah, blah, blah.
I'm sure that's true.
And yes, and so singing actually helps with that because it forces you to inhale and expel all your air. And so every psalm is the playlist. Poor Bishop Hooper.
I just found it from in the text train here.
Yes. So
every psalm is the playlist.
Yes.
That was the band.
No, yeah, because I looked him up.
Oh. Okay.
And yeah, the artist. And anyway, really, really good Bible verses set to music, very peaceful.
Yeah.
And that's what we're talking about, peace. So,
there we go.
So the light is, like Paul starts most of his letters with grace and peace, grace and peace. Mm-hmm. Usually grace and peace go hand in hand. We serve a God of peace, and he himself is our peace. Yep. So it is possible.
It is.
It is. It's there. Yep. So.
And it is a gift.
Yeah. And so maybe this...
A measure of grace, right?
Yeah. And if this season right now, especially, or whatever you're in, you're finding it hard to find peace.
Maybe reach out and talk to somebody.
Reach out to talk to somebody. Maybe try to just turn around and make peace for somebody else and see what that does, too.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
But it's there. Yep. He's there. Things are hard, but shalom means that things are going to be complicated.
Right.
And he's going to restore it all perfectly one day.
Mm-hmm.
And he's doing little bits of it right now. So we're just practicing for when he restores it for real.
I love that. That is a perfect way to wrap all this up. Big time.
Yeah.
Should I pray us out?
Yes, please.
Father God, thank you so much for this opportunity to get together, Lord, and to pray over everyone listening here to this podcast. We just ask that you bring peace, immeasurable peace beyond understanding into the hearts and minds of everybody listening, and especially during this Christmas season, Lord. Help us to be able to see and identify and know the right things to do to bring love and peace to someone else. And Lord, help us to have peace in our own hearts, to block the comparison game, to block the posturing and all those things, and to know that we are completely loved by you, exactly who we are, and that you're going to give us avenues and difficulties to help us to grow into trusting you more. And we ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Hi, guys. Thanks so much for listening to our podcast episode today. We hope it blessed you. You can also reach us at lightinyourcorner@gmail.com or on Instagram at lightinyourcorner. Also, we live in a day and age where people don't really spend their time or money on things that they haven't read reviews of. So if you want to be helpful to somebody else who might be looking for a little bit of light to get through their days, hop on over to wherever you get podcasts and you can leave a review there. It's nice for us to read, but it also might be helpful to someone else, and we're all in this together. We love you guys so much. Have a great week.